From the heart of the land of the Guardians, where the dog pound roars, the Cavs soar, and heartbreak is just part of the game, this is 3 and Out, Cleveland Sports Talk. With Jason, Drew, and Michael, 3 diehard fans breaking down the highs, the lows, and everything in between. No fluff, no filters, just Cleveland sports the way it's meant to be. Now let's get into it. Here's your hosts, Michael, Jason, and Drew.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Drew here with 3rd and 1, 3 and Out. Been a while. Life happens. I'm recording this by myself. Unfortunately, Mike couldn't be here. Jason can't be here. So this is me figuring out as I go. So I apologize if the quality's poor, audio's poor, but at least wanted to get out and talk to you guys. Give you a little update on things, talk about some of the teams and what's going on, until hopefully we can get back the 3 of us together and coordinate schedules and those types of things. Because over the summer, with no school and vacations and travel and all that, and then just other things in life that have popped up, it's been, needless to say, more than difficult to find time to meet together and coordinate shows and episodes. So for that, we apologize. And hopefully we'll get something from this and, be able to talk and get some feedback and those types of things. So hopefully it comes across well. But for me, summer's been mostly spent running kids to different activities and theater and sports and camps and all that on top of work. So it's Labor Day morning recording this, September 1st. So September, new month, new start. Hopefully you all had a good summer as well and transitioned well into school and things like that. So let's get started. And again, hopefully as we go, eventually Mike and Jason can join us, and Mike can take over the techie stuff that I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be good. So we'll see. First thing I wanted to touch on was just talk about the Buckeyes game. That's the biggest thing that just happened. Obviously a huge win for the Buckeyes, an opportunity to get to see largely a new team with all the players they lost to the NFL in graduation, new skill positions other than Jeremiah Smith, new QB, a lot of new pieces on defense. Realistically, the 2 pieces back are Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. Those were the 2 known quantities. And obviously you're going up against the number 1 team in the country. So good measuring stick, good barometer, good, I won't say a good start, because obviously it was a rough game. Wasn't the cleanest game on either side, but that's to be expected. Early in the season, defense is kind of the one that gets a jump start, and this game was no different. And it also can parlay potentially into some Browns topics when it comes to the quarterback of Texas, obviously. The biggest thing I noticed was just almost looked like uncomfortable offense. Whether it was Texas or Ohio State, you're talking about Arch Manning, the guy that everybody's kind of dubbing the next great QB, made some plays late in the game to get him that late touchdown. But, is that too much, too late? Is that once the kind of pressure's off because the outcome is, for the most part, dictated? Or was that him in crunch time, you can expect better performances? On a side note, I'm in my house, my family's here. So if you hear background noise, just life. Family. So anyway, with regards to Arch Manning, he showed a guy that hadn't started a ton of games against one of the best defenses in the country. So we'll get to him a little bit later as it pertains to the Browns. But on the Buckeyes, Julian saying, I can't say I was overly impressed, but was that again, first start, he did that ball he threw to Carnell Tate for the touchdown. Beautiful ball. Little bit underthrown, but still, otherwise a good ball. Give his receiver a chance to catch it. I think the biggest part that was a little disappointing was the run game. Couldn't get anything established. It looked like every time the ball was handed off, there wasn't a hole, in the primary direction. And again, not sure if our backs are just inexperienced. I mean, CJ Donaldson's not inexperienced, but in our offense, you could say he was. But just didn't look like we had any lanes to run, and then never really cut back. We were outgained, what was it? Almost 100 yards on the ground, I believe. Yeah, by almost 100 yards on the ground. And typically, I mean, you think last year with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, we had two guys who could run for 100 yards individually. So that part was a little disappointing. Hopefully we see that kind of settle in over, the course of the games. Obviously the schedule gets a little easier until we play Penn State in a few weeks. But that was the biggest thing that I was kind of like disappointed about, was our run game. I'd heard some good things about some of the backs coming in, and then the freshman running back was supposed to be a stud. But again, first game, great defense. So we'll see where that goes, but definitely need to see some improvement there. And I think receiving wise, we need to see people step up more consistently, so it's not on Jeremiah Smith. I mean, he had 5 catches, I believe 6 catches. The rest of the team combined had 7. Again, he's that good, but when they're double and triple teaming him and sending multiple guys that they're on his route, other guys have to be able to step up. And outside of that catch by Carnell Tate, there wasn't really a big play made by another pass catcher. They were just more routine catches, things in the flow of the offense, not big moments, big plays, third down catches. Most of that went to Jeremiah Smith. So would love to see some more step up from outside of Jeremiah Smith offensively, because moving forward, they're going to need it. Again, coming up, I looked at the schedule here. They don't have a tough schedule. Grambling, Ohio, Washington may be okay, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, and then they got Penn State. So you got, 6 weeks to kind of prepare for Penn State. And offensively, there's a lot to be desired, but you're going up against the number 1 team in the country. It's not going to look pretty. It's not going to be perfect. Hopefully when they sit down and break down film and look at things, they can see things they did well, see the areas they need to improve, and just grow from there. Defensively, I mean, they were studs. And playing the number 1 team in the country, and for 3.5 quarters, you shut them out. I mean, not much more can be said. They secondary was good, forced Manning into some hurried throws, some off-balance throws. He was off on some of the targets, missed some receivers, some open guys, but was that because we took him out of a rhythm? Was that because of the pressure? Was that because the coverage was, shielding one way or another? Again, haven't got to see the film, so hard to say. But really not a lot to be picky about defensively. There was a stat, and I wish I would have written it down, where they were talking about, the last time that Texas had been shut out through 3 quarters. And again, when you start in a game, you're putting up stats the last time you were shut out through 3 quarters, your defense is playing well. So to me, it's more the offensive side of the ball and finding more of an identity, a rhythm, and additional weapons. And I think you need at least 1 or 2 guys to run the ball to be a threat, and then another receiver to at least take, hopefully more than that, but to at least take some of the pressure off Jeremiah Smith. He's that good, but they also have blue chippers outside of him. I mean, Carnell Tate should be, a big threat, a guy that forces defense to keep, to be honest, because if you're going to double cover Jeremiah Smith, you've got, Carnell Tate on the outside, one-on-one kind of thing. So we'll see what Ryan Day does with it. Honestly, I'm not the hugest Ryan Day fan, but he obviously proved his worth last year. And so we'll see. Time will tell, but you take it 1 week at a time, and the biggest threat early in the season, they pass the test. Not pretty, but a win is a win. And I mean, that's one that's going to hold up, because very well could be Texas' only loss of the year heading into the playoffs. So big win, big quality win, big 4th down stops. I guess we got to talk about that. I mean, again, without looking it up, 4 or 5 different fourth down stops, maybe more than that, including 4th and 1 on the goal line, a repeat of last year. This defense is the epitome. They were last year, and they've shown it to start this year, of bend but not break. When they had to come up with a big stop, they did. And, there's nothing more against a great team, a talented team, that you can ask for than making big plays in big moments on big downs in big situations. And the defense was big. That's why they're at the top of the Big Ten, right? So let me know your thoughts on the Buckeyes, what you guys saw. Again, first game of the year, not going to be, well, hopefully not their best game. Hopefully the best football is still ahead of them. So now, again, I'm going to talk on, some Brown stuff, some Guardians. I'll finish with some Guardians and some Cavs stuff. But the bulk of this middle I'm going to spend on the Browns. I want to kind of go over the depth chart, the schedule, talk a little bit about the QBs, Quinshon Judkins, those types of things. So kind of bounce around. Again, this is unedited. This is all off the top. I don't have the editing skills. So this is just going to be played beginning to end, warts included. So bear with me. First thing I wanted to touch on was the depth chart. Obviously not a lot of surprises, but when it comes to the QB, the backup QB is the more interesting story. Apologies. I normally have my other guys where I can take a drink of water and not impact, but so Joe Flacco, easily best QB in camp. I don't think there's any discussion. There was any debate. Nobody thought otherwise. I think even if Pickett would have been healthy, they may have wanted Pickett to start, but he wouldn't have been the better QB. Joe Flacco's he's experienced. You're not going to throw a defense at him that he hasn't seen. He's just a wily veteran. Unfortunately, he's 40. He's a stopgap. A year, maybe 2, while the young guys develop. Kenny Pickett, obviously, we got back our 5th round pick for. Who knows what we had in him? Never really got a chance to see once he hurt his hamstring, and he was done. And so when it comes to Gabriel and Sanders, that's sorry, my wife was leaving, but that was what everybody talked about throughout the preseason. Was Dillon versus Shedeur versus Dillon. Who was the better QB? Who had the better game? Who got the more reps? Who got the less reps? And I can say for me, what I saw in Shedeur, obviously they're both rookies. They're both going to have ups and downs and this and that. For me, it was the intangibles from Shedeur, the interviews, the interactions with teammates, the community stuff. Like, to me, that's a QB1 intangible type situation. Not that Dillon doesn't have it, but Dillon to me is your I don't want to say, your educated guy. He's smart. He's book smart. He knows the playbook. He understands his role. He knows what he's supposed to do. But Shedeur is the one that gets everybody to buy in. And when it comes to your QB1, you got to have a guy people follow. Sorry, that's my dog. He's sitting under my table. And so you might hear some barking because my daughter just got up and they're barking at her. So apologies again, live, unedited. Getting back to so Dillon is that guy. He's going to know the playbook. He's going to know the plays. He's going to know the reads. He's going to know the checkdowns. He's going to know the progression. He's going to be able to read the defense, pre-snap, all of those things. Hang on 1 second. Sorry. Sawyer, can you get the door without it knocking, please? Can you get the door without it knocking, please? Go out the garage. Please hurry. Sorry. Again, life. We're making the best of it. My neighbor friend for my daughter is here, and I didn't want her knocking on the door and getting the dogs all riled up. So Anyway, all that being said, Shedeur is a guy that, there's obviously growth to be had. Ren, down. There's growth to be had, but there's a leadership there. I was a guy who wasn't a big fan of Shedeur when we drafted him, when we were talking about him being our first pick in the first round. Like, I wasn't about it. But the more I see him, the more I'm a fan of him. And as a former athlete and coach, to me, that's what the players are going to gravitate towards. That's what they're going to buy into. That's who they're going to follow, listen to. It's no shot to Dylan. Not at all. I actually, in that second preseason game, or the last preseason game where he played a lot, I really liked what I saw from him. Quick throws, that 2-minute drive. Quick throws, quick reads, accurate passes, finding the open guy, the open spot in the defense. Like, it was all very good. Now, under center, his stats are concerning a little bit. He's very good out of shotgun. Under center, not nearly as effective. And obviously Shedeur struggled in that game. However, the first time Shedeur played, his pocket presence, his ability to move in the pocket, finding tight windows, all excellent. Overthrew some guys, but that's also Dylan's downside, is he tends to overthrow. So all that to say, it's a very sticky subject, because I think there's part of both of those QBs that have earned the right to be the backup, but have also earned the right to need to learn more. And so I don't know that we have a true backup who, if something happens to Flacco, is ready to go in regards to winning. If we're trying to win and make the playoffs and those types of things, but would at least allow us to see what we have, to know what we need to do in the draft next year, to see, are we looking at Drew Aller? Are we looking at Arch Manning? Are we looking at, who are we trying to get with 2 first-round picks? What is our pick position? Do we need to package them to move up if possible? So it's tough. Tough read. I'm more a fan of Shedeur. I think Jason would tell you he's half and half, but more a fan probably of Dylan Gabriel in terms of the on-the-field play, which I get. I don't knock him for that. We go back and forth. We discuss. We disagree. It's fun. But that's what'll be interesting about this season is, how long do you keep Flacco in before you make a move, and or do you just ride it out with Flacco and let the others learn? Do you give Flacco X amount of games? Do you give Dylan X amount of games? Do you give Shedeur X amount of games just to see what you have? I don't know. I think that's going to be the storyline of the year. I think it's going to be interesting. We'll see how they play it. Again, I am not the biggest Stefanski fan, so we'll see what he decides to do. We'll see what his decisions are, what his rotation is, what his outlook for the season, I think, will be dictated by who he keeps at QB. So, yeah. Sorry, this is my little guy.
Hi.
Yeah, bud. What's up?
Can I play with Violet?
Yes, you may. Okay. Sorry, again, life unedited. I'll keep saying that, but is what it is. Hopefully you stick it out, and we can have some banter and comments and things like that. So moving on from quarterback, because there'll be plenty of talk of that throughout the year. But running back, disappointing of Quinshon Judkins. Really hoped he would be our RB1 heading into the year. I liked the toughness and the physical play and the way he ran at Ohio State. Hard to say if what the NFL will do. I don't know. It's a little bit different than Mike Hall last year, where if I'm remembering this correctly, Mike Hall's accuser dropped the charges. Didn't mean there was lack of evidence, but she withdrew the charge, whatever. Whereas with Quinshon, it appears they did an investigation and didn't find anything enough to warrant any charges. So I think that's different. But I don't know how the NFL will view it. I don't know what the actual evidence is. So my guess, I'm thinking that the league is just waiting to see what the evidence is to make a decision, regardless of charges for coming from the league. So I don't know. It's disappointing. I don't think a backfield of Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson is going to do you very good. You don't have a back that can get you that last yard or two on a tough third down play, on a goal line play. You have two backs who are more speedy, agile, elusive type backs, not your, Nick Chubb that can run through you or around you. And unfortunately, Nick Chubb, I was very distraught as a fan over that situation because definitely wanted him to come back, wanted him, regardless of ability, to finish his career here as a Cleveland Brown. Not going to happen. And he's in Houston now due to injury, but who knows if Mixon wouldn't have got hurt, what it would have been. But he's going to go into week 1 as RB1 in Houston on a playoff caliber team that, I hope he runs for 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. Nick Chubb is one of my all-time favorite Cleveland athletes of all time, up there with Mark Price and Albert Bell. I know those two opposite ends of the spectrum. Don't ask me, but he's up there. Probably my personal favorite Cleveland Brown of all time. Even back in the days of Bernie. No offense to Bernie. Bernie, I love you. Even guys like Joe Thomas, who were diehard Cleveland people and still are. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with the running back room, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about it. So, wide receiver also concerned. Right now, the only proven entity is Jerry Jeudy. Hopefully, Cedric Tillman can stay healthy and get himself back to the guy who was getting 70 to 90 yards a game before his concussion last year, was finding a rhythm, albeit with Jameis. But a big body guy who can make some tough catches. I hope there's something there. As far as slot receivers, I'm guessing Isaiah Bond, Jamari Thrash, maybe Gage, Larvadain, I think is how you say it. But hard to say. I mean, it's just a very unproven wide receiver room. And so, I think Joe's going to sling it. I think Joe's going to like his tight ends. And I think Joe, much like he did with, holy cow, the guy we lost to Buffalo last year. Why am I drawing a blank that we traded to Buffalo? Or whatever. Anyway, 2 years ago at the end of the year when they were like so in sync that they couldn't be stopped. Amari Cooper. Holy cow. Brain fart. Hopefully Jerry Jeudy can be that, but hopefully we can have a second option, a third option as when he's not open in a wide receiver room. I really wish we would have drafted a wide receiver. As you know from previous episodes, I was big on Travis Hunter. We'll see what he can do this year as well. See if I was right or if Mason is really that good. And we'll get to defensive line here in a minute. So I think it's an unproven wide receiver room, but I think you've got a quarterback who's going to at least give guys opportunities to make plays. He's going to get rid of the ball. He's going to throw it, and you're either going to catch it or you're not. So we'll find out what we have. Tight end room, I'm a big fan of David Njoku. I think he's an underutilized talent. I think outside of Joe Flacco, he hasn't had a quarterback that really enjoyed using him, that threw to him enough, that gave him enough opportunities. But some of it may be him in inconsistencies. Again, I won't say I'm a tight end pro to know how crisp his routes are, to know if he's always given maximum effort on each play, each route, those types of things. I don't know. But I know when he had a quarterback who utilized the tight ends, he was super effective in a top 5 tight end, and that quarterback is back. The guy that I'm most excited this year to see is Harold Fannin. He was the one guy in the draft. I said, if you guys remember back that episode, I said he's my dream pick. I think there's so much there. I think he's a guy you can use out of the backfield. You can put him out wide. You can put him in tight as a tight end. I think he's so versatile. He's also raw, You know what I mean? I don't think he's not a guy who's coming in as a complete package. He's got to grow. He's got to learn. He's raw. But he is, I think, a well of untapped potential. And I can't wait to see what he has. I'm glad he got that touchdown in preseason to kind of get that jitter and that pressure out of the way. And now he can just go play. But I am super excited because I think he's an incredibly physically gifted player and reminds me a lot of, I'm going back here, but another MAC player coming out of college, Antonio Gates, who didn't even play college football. He was a basketball player, and coincidentally, I played against him. But just every year got better until he had a Hall of Fame career. And to me, that's Harold Fannin. So we'll see. We'll see if I'm right. Offensive line, I think, is our second most talented area. Right now, it appears we're coming in largely healthy. Who knows about Ethan Posich? I know he got hurt, but it doesn't appear to be serious. But the biggest thing I'm looking for with our line is the improved conditioning of DeJuan Jones. Does that help him stay healthy? And then Zach Zinter and Luke Whippler, who both really struggled last year. I want to see them get some reps. I want to see their growth. I want to see if we have anything with those guys because, you know, your Jack Conklins, your Wyatt Tellers, and your Joel Batonios, those guys are getting old and don't know how much more they have in the tank, if anything. And so we need to see what we have behind them to know what we need in free agency and the draft and the drafts coming up in subsequent years. So I'm glad we're healthy. Biggest thing I'm happy about with the offensive line is the conditioning and seemingly reinvigorated DeJuan Jones because the guy is a monster. And if he can stay healthy and he's in better shape, I think he could be a left tackle of the future, which would be nice. Jed Wills, who we drafted 10th, and we were trying to convince ourselves could be a left tackle, is currently unemployed. So another miss for the Andrew Berry regime. By far, this could be his best draft. Hopefully it is. But he has not had a huge track record with drafting, and so we'll see. Defensive line, I think is our strongest area. Obviously, Miles. It all begins and ends with Miles and his health and how they line him up and how they use him and things like that. But I still think he's the top defensive lineman in the entire NFL. So Mason Graham, I hope I'm wrong about him. And I tell you what, in preseason, I liked what I saw. The guy is mean. And I say that in a good way. He plays with a motor. I think that's going to push Miles to be better. He is physical. He's strong. When we went to a practice a month ago, he looked fit. He looked nothing like the Mason Graham you saw around draft day. And kudos to him. I hope 100 times over I'm wrong about him. And so far it seems to be trending that way. Where I could have been wrong about Mason and right about Travis, and both teams win, which would be awesome. Malik Collins, I like, but the other guy on the line that I'm most excited to see is Alex Wright. I think he was starting to trend really upwards last year when he got hurt. And I'm hoping that this year he can stay healthy and prove the growth and talent that they saw when they got him. In preseason, he looked good. He had some big plays. I think Isaiah McGuire maybe is the more consistent player, but Alex Wright is the more dynamic and more impactful. Where with Isaiah McGuire, you're going to get a guy who's in the right place at the right time, filling his gaps and filling his role, and always going to be just that constant force of consistency. Alex Wright might have a little more up and down, but man, when you may need a big play, he always seems to be around the ball. And to me, a guy like that is invaluable opposite Myles Garrett. So linebacker is concerning, to say the least. I love what we've seen from Carson Schwarzenegger so far. The guy has a motor. The guy's got wheels. The guy's athletic. The guy's got hands. The guy's always seemingly around the ball, which is what we had in JOK. And I pray that he is healing and that someday we see him back on the field. But if not, I pray that he's able to have a life of comfort and normality once he recovers fully. So, side note, but praying for JOK. But Carson is, I would love to see them out on the field together. Yeah, that would be chaos, but in a good way. But Diabate, Jerome Baker, Devin Bush, EMA, those are guys that are all unproven a little bit. Devin Bush showed signs last year. What I like about it is it's a pretty athletic linebacking core that can cover a lot of area. Hopefully that means we're good in covering and pass plays and filling gaps and running plays. Even if they're not the best at making the right play or being in the right position, they're filling something and they're covering something and just making it harder for the offense. So I think it's unproven. I think there's potential. I'm not real high, and we're, knock on wood. I don't want to speak anything into existence, but a injury to Carson Schlesinger away from being really rough in the linebacking core. But hoping Jerome Baker can step up too as a Cleveland native and, stand out for the home team. Secondary, really, really concerned about. Martin Emerson went down, even though after a rough year last year, he was our second best option. Denzel, again, not wanting to speak ill, but is one injury away from potentially having to not play again. And Greg Newsome hasn't really played on the outside in a couple years. And now he's your guy opposite Denzel. So, and behind them is, in terms of cornerbacks, a bunch of guys that hardly ever heard of. Rayshon Jenkins, I know he's a vet. Donovan McMillan, Jarek Bernard Converse, like guys that, like, who? Concerning. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're guys who just, in man coverage or have great coverage skills, since Schwartz likes to run a lot of man. And I hope, I'm wrong and they can just cover and, be all over receivers and make it tough and give the defensive line at least some time to get to the quarterback. So we'll see. Safety-wise, I'm not as concerned about with Delpit, and Hickman's okay. But Delpit being obviously the standout. But again, behind them, you've got, guys I haven't heard of a lot. So we'll see. Cam Mitchell, hopefully he can step up a little bit. Miles Harden as cornerbacks. I know the other guys I said were safeties. Rayshawn and Donovan, and those guys are safeties, not cornerbacks. But hopefully Cam Mitchell and Miles Harden can fill in the nickelback. We'll see. Special teams ought to be fun. Maybe the best punter in the sport, and maybe the rawest kicker after having to get rid of Dustin Hopkins. One great year, and then it's like he fell off the face of the earth, which is disappointing. We gave him all that money, that contract, and did nothing with it. So he is now unemployed, and we start over with Schmidt, spelled very weird. So we'll see. Again, in terms of the depth chart, I'm not sure I'm all that confident. I think I told Jason the one day, I said, we're one injury away at any position from being adequate to being poor. You lose Joe Flacco, you're probably poor at the quarterback. Not that we aren't already. You lose Judy, your wide receiver room is poor. Offensive line and defensive line have a little more depth, but Myles Garrett or DeJuan Jones, those guys get hurt. It changes things a lot. Linebacker, Schlesinger, Denzel Ward. You lose any of those guys, and those positions go from adequate to poor. And health hasn't always been our strong point, but hopefully our training crew has improved in the offseason as well. Although after Martin Emerson and Diabate and stuff, we'll see. And a lot of soft tissue injuries. Look at Kenny Pickett, out for all of preseason because of a hamstring. So we'll see. Moving on to schedule here, I want to talk a little bit about that. I got to say, if you look at the first 6 weeks, home against Cincinnati, at Baltimore, home against Green Bay, at Detroit, home against Minnesota. I think that's the one in London, if I'm not mistaken. At Pittsburgh, home against Miami is the 7th game. But that first 6 games ending at Pittsburgh, I think we'll be fortunate to be better than 1-5. Minnesota game in London, maybe. Yeah, maybe we get that one. JJ McCarthy, still don't know what you have in him. They have more talent, but you got lesser quarterback. That's the first 6 games where I think we have the advantage at quarterback. You got Joe Burrow, you've got Lamar, you've got Jordan Love, you've got Jared Goff, and then you've got Aaron Rodgers, outside of JJ McCarthy in those first 6 games. So to me, those first 6 games, I think, will dictate what we do at quarterback moving forward. If we're 3-3 or somehow 4-2, I think we ride Flacco and see how far he can take us. If we, after those 6 games, we come home to play Miami and we're 2-4, 1-5, 0-6, I think they look to the rookies and they kind of give them, say it's 11 games left. Dylan, you get 6 games. Shedeur, you get 5, and then they'll make a decision on who they keep, who they don't. If they draft a quarterback next year, we'll see. So it's, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a tough schedule. I mean, even after that, you've got Miami. That's going to be a tough game. At New England, that's going to be a tough game. They're much improved, especially with. My gosh, I'm having problems with names today. Their new coach that was our liaison last year and de facto offensive line coach. Mike used to be at Tennessee. Oh my gosh. Anyway, at New York, again, say what you want. I'm a big Justin Fields fan, so I like him. Home against Baltimore, at Vegas, home against San Francisco, home against Tennessee is, I think, the one game this year that we'll actually be favored in. So to me, that win and the Minnesota game are maybe our 2 games you look at and you're like, yeah, we can win those for sure. At Chicago, again, I'm not a huge Caleb Williams fan, but I like the talent they have around him, and he wasn't terrible last year. So Buffalo, and then we end the year home against Buffalo, home against Pittsburgh, and at Cincinnati. I mean, that is a tough schedule. You're looking, again, Tennessee and Minnesota maybe are the games we're favored in, with New England and the Jets being other games, but those are both on the road. And then Vegas, also on the road. But again, with Geno Smith, I think they're much improved. I mean, they got Brock Bowers and they got Ashton Genty now. And so to me, it's a, if we're healthy, we could be 4-13, and that's the best we can be. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we're better than that, but I think it all hinges on the quarterback play and how long we stick with Flacco. So we'll see. It's a lot about the Browns. We'll talk a lot about them moving forward, but at least wanted to touch on kind of my thoughts going into the season and preseason thoughts and going into the first game. To me, it's all, that first game is all about offensive rhythm and offensive identity. What do we have? What do we not need? Our defense will be okay, I think, the first game. You're going against a high-powered offense. We'll give up 28 points, but can the offense score 20 plus? What did we do? One time last year, I think we scored 20 plus. Is that what it was? Let me look just real quick. I want to say it was maybe one game. So we scored last year, we scored 17, 18, 15, 16, 13, 16, 14. Then we scored 29 against Baltimore, 10, 14, 24 against Pittsburgh, so 2 games. Denver, we had 32. That was in the Jameis when he was running. I forgot about that. Then 14, 7, 6, 10, 10, 12, and finished with 33. So, that was preseason. So never mind. So yeah, we only had 3 games last year where we scored 20 or more points. So to me, that's kind of the barometer offensively is can we find a way against suspect defense? We don't know what they are to score points. Last year against Cincinnati, we scored 6 points and we scored 14 points against the worst defense in the entire NFL. So, and so, do I think we'll win? I'd like to say yes, but I don't. But can we make it competitive, and can our offense put up some points? Can we move the ball? Can we get big plays on third downs when we need them? Can the offensive line have limited pre-snap penalties? We always seem to have false starts and false starts and false starts and, illegal formations and, all of that. It's just stop the pre-snap penalties. So we'll see. If it's a 28-20 or 28-21 loss, I can be encouraged by that. So just moving on, and then I'll close. Just wanted to touch on the Guardians. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know. Like, they look good, and then they look terrible. And then they look good, and then they look terrible. And then they look good, and then they look terrible. They cut it down, I think, to 6 games behind in their division, and they were 3 games back of the wild card. Now they're 10 games back, 10 and a half games back of Detroit, and in the wild card they're 5 or 6. They're only 4. They're 4 games back still in the wild card. Is that right? No. Oh yeah, they're 4 games back. Sorry, I had to make sure I was reading that correctly. They're 4 games back in the wild card. I don't think they have the firepower. I don't think they have the pitching depth. And with the whole Emmanuel Clase fiasco, who knows how that's going to turn out? He may never play baseball again. They don't have an identity as a closer. I know Smith has tried, but he's been up and down. Although he's been a little better of late, they just, even Jose looks like he's getting frustrated. And to me, it would have just been nice, get all those. I know they brought up Kefis. Oh my gosh, I am doing awful with names today. But I don't need that. Unfiltered, that's what we said. So, yeah, Kefis. Okay, I want to make sure I had the right young guy. Kefis has looked good. They finally brought him up. But guys like Bazzano and some of the other young guys who are doing well in the minor, just bring them up. I know we got rid of Santana, which I think was good. But let Manzardo now, he's playing every day. And just bring up some of those young guys. Give them an opportunity to play. See what you have. I know with the way their time works and the contracts and things, the Guardians like to bring them up later so they have more time with them, and they become part of the Guardians for longer before they got to let them go because they don't pay enough. But it's just, as a fan, it's frustrating. Tanner Bybee's been terrible. I don't know what happened to him. At least Gavin Williams has looked better as the year's gone on, and maybe we have something with him. But that probably just means we get rid of him sooner than later, and can't keep them. So, getting rid of, excuse me. Oh my goodness. Names, Drew. The pitcher was hurt, and we had to trade away. Obviously he's looking good, and would have been our ace, but it's the way we roll. It's the Guardians fan. I missed the days back in the 90s when our lineup was so stacked. You had Hall of Famers like Sandy Alomar and Ramirez at the bottom of the lineup, because you had, the Baergas and the Albert Bells and the Jim Tomes and, the Kenny Loftons and, all those guys that were just so good. The lineup was amazing. Just miss those days. Now we're like, hey, we scored 2 runs. What did we go, like 30-ish innings without even scoring a run recently? Just, I don't know. It doesn't look like there's a lot of heart. There's a lot of cohesiveness, a lot of fight in the team this year, which they had last year. Last year, it was like, a kind of a never give up attitude. And so they pulled out a lot of games late that maybe they shouldn't have won. And that was fun to watch. So kind of like the Cardiac Kids. So we'll see. I'm not real high on the Guardians and what they're going to do through September, trying to battle for a wild card. But crazier things have happened. Detroit made a run last year at the end of the year, and maybe, Detroit's leading this year, and maybe it's the Guardians who make the run. We'll see. So last thing I want to touch on with the Cavs is the Max Strus injury. You already are missing Darius for the first few months of the season. And now Max Strus is out for 3 to 4 months. I don't think, again, we talked about the second apron a while ago. I'm not going to rehash it. But because of being a second apron team, they really can't give anybody money. And so there's not really anybody out there they can sign. But Malik Beasley would be beautiful. But I don't think he'll sign for a minimum. And who knows if the NBA is still going to do anything with, his gambling allegations, even though he's been cleared. Just like the NFL, the NBA could theoretically still pass on some discipline to him. But I would love to have him as a stand-in for Max Strus. I don't see it happening. It's a miracle long shot if he just want to join a contender for minimum. But if he's going to join us, why wouldn't he join somebody else that's maybe a little further along in their contention window? So, but assuming that that's a long shot and really a non-starter, I'm interested to see earlier in the year. So you don't have Strus and you don't have Garland. There are 3 guys that. 4 really, to be honest with you, but one of them's already been an impact player. First one is Jalen Tyson. There were things last year I saw with him that I was very excited about. I like his motor. I like his aggressiveness. I like he plays with no fear. He's kind of plays with a reckless abandon. However, I think that's also can be a detriment when you're trying to play in a team concept. And I think he also lacks the athleticism to finish strong at the rim through contact, over guys, that kind of thing. And I think his jump shot's a little inconsistent. And so I'd like to see him kind of develop that offensive game where it doesn't rely solely on his motor. Where get me out in the open floor and I'm dynamic, get me in the half court and I'm a guy who stands in the corner and shoots threes. I'd like to see a little more diversity from him, and I think we're going to need that, having lost a wing for another wing that's coming in with a year of experience. Craig Porter Jr., again, bulldog. He is a guy that I would have on every team I play on because I love the way he plays. He is physical. He's athletic. He plays in the team concept, and I think he passes the ball well. He gets after ball handlers. His liability is he's not a great shooter. If you could get a Greg Porter Jr. that comes out next year and can shoot mid-30s from 3 consistently on a good number of attempts. Again, he's 40% for his career, but that's on less than 1 attempt per game. With Garland out, obviously, I think he becomes your primary backup to start. We'll get to the third guy. And so I need to see him be a little more of an outside threat. Not pull-up jumpers, but a guy who can stretch the defense, pull guys out, and force it so his defender isn't inside helping on other guys driving. And, even if it's a catch and shoot, 3 attempts a game, he's making, 1.25 attempts a game out of 3, taking 5, making 2, that kind of thing. But he needs to take more than 1 a game. No. He'll have more minutes, I think. But that's what I want to see from him is an expanded range and consistency on his jumper. And then the third guy is Tyrese Proctor. I love the fact that he's a big guard. I think that's going to help even when Garland gets back, as he can play with Garland and Mitchell separately and be that defensive wing that's got a little size. For me, what I want to see from him going into the year, because I think his offensive game's pretty good, pretty diverse, a lot like Lonzo Ball, although a little better shooter. But I want to see him get 10, 15 pounds of weight put on. Get a little bigger frame. So as he's guarding those wing players, as he's guarding, Ant-Man, as he's guarding Brown at Boston, as he's guarding Luka Doncic, that he can start to absorb some of that contact as he's guarding those bigger wings. Those are the three guys, young guys, I think, who are going to get an extended role with Garland and Strus out. Because I don't think they're going to play ball a lot. They want to keep him healthy for the playoffs. And Larry Nance isn't going to be one that's going to play on the wing much. He's going to be your sub inside, playing alongside Mobley and Allen as a stretch 4 or a small 5. So in terms of the new guys. So I'm interested to see what those three guys bring heading into the year. And that's what I'm watching for as they go into their preseason and start to practice and play their preseason games and things like that. So time will tell, but I think I like all three of them. I think Tyrese was a great pick in the second round. I like all three because I think all three have a little bit of bulldog in them. I think all three of them bring a little bit of an edge that the team has been missing. And I think all three of them have a different skill set that can bring something different to help make the Cavs a better team and a deeper team than even they were last year. So that's what I have on the Cavs. Obviously, we don't know a lot right now because it's the off season, but with what they were given, drafting Tyrese Proctor, getting Larry Nance, and getting Lonzo Ball, I'm not sure they could have done any better given the financial limitations and their unwillingness to trade away some of those other guys, which is perfectly fine. I'm not sold on the team, but I'm encouraged by the changes. So we'll see. The biggest thing that's going to be a determining factor of the Cavs this year is Evan Mobley and what he becomes. Is he going to become the best player on the Cavs? Or is he going to continue to operate more as a safety net when Mitchell and Garland and those other guys don't have it going? I can't get anything, throw him over the ball. I think he's got to be a focal point. So we'll see. A lot of uncertainty in all Cleveland sports, whether it's the Browns, whether it's the Guardians, whether it's the Cavs. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's a lot of, I think, how did Jason Lloyd, I heard him say it and it made a lot of sense. It was I forget how he said it, almost like it's a research paper, where you're trying to find out what you have. It's an expedition. You were taking a trek out on these seasons and seeing what we have, what we don't, what we need, and that kind of thing. So hang in there. Let me know what you think. Give me some feedback. Hopefully I'll be able to have Jason soon. And then at some point, hopefully Michael can come back as well. And we can get 3 and out back to 3 and not me, you, and a fireside chat. So with all that being said, I hope you guys have a great holiday, a great Labor Day, a great start to the school year, and heading into the holiday season. But, in the chat down below, give me your thoughts on each team, the feedback on the stream. Anything I brought up, love to hear from you. So wish you guys the best. And until next time, this is 3 and Out or 3rd and 1. Catch you later.